The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. Inside, representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in rows that curved around a central platform. This was the Galactic Hegemony Council, the most powerful organization in the known galaxy. Today, they were about to make what they thought was a simple decision. Ambassador Zeth Prime stood at the center of the chamber. His tall, thin body swayed slightly as he activated the holographic display. The image of a small blue and green planet appeared above his head, slowly turning in the artificial light. "Council members," Zeth Prime said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers, "I present to you planet designation Terra 3, located in the Outer Rim sector. 7 Alpha, the local inhabitants call it Earth." Murmurs filled the chamber as the representatives studied the planet. It looked pleasant enough, with swirling white clouds and vast blue oceans. Green and brown continents were visible beneath the atmospheric layer. "What do we know about the inhabitants?" asked Counselor Vrex, her 6 arms folding across her chest. As the representative of the Mandorian Shock Corps, she was always interested in potential military challenges. Zeth Prime touched a control, and the image changed to show crude spacecraft. The ships looked primitive, with chemical rockets and basic metal construction. The species calls itself humans. They have achieved basic spaceflight, but their technology is extremely limited. Their most advanced vessels can barely reach their own planetary satellite. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Several representatives made jokes about species that still used chemical propulsion. The Vorthan Empire had abandoned such primitive methods over 10,000 years ago. Their weapon systems? Counselor Vrex pressed. "Nuclear fission devices," Zeth Prime replied. "Crude, but they seem quite proud of them. They're most powerful. Weapons would barely scratch the hull of our smallest scout ship." More laughter. Nuclear weapons were considered toys by most council species. The Zerthi Dominion had stopped using them as training exercises because they were not destructive enough to provide proper practice. Counselor Keth of the Krillian Swarms leaned forward in his seat. His insect-like features gleamed under the chamber lights. "What about their military organization?" "Divided into several hundred separate political units," Zeth Prime said. "They fight among themselves constantly. Their largest wars involve primitive projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Intelligence suggests they would be unable to mount any unified resistance." The chamber fell quiet as the representatives considered this information. A divided species with primitive weapons and no unified command structure. It was the kind of easy conquest that younger council members often used to prove themselves. "Resources?" asked Treasurer Voth, always concerned with the practical benefits of expansion. Zeth Prime smiled, his sharp teeth glinting. "Excellent. The planet has vast water reserves, multiple climate zones suitable for various council species, and significant mineral deposits. Our preliminary scans show rare earth elements in abundance. The system also contains several other worlds that could serve as mining operations or military bases." Nods of approval filled the chamber. Water was always valuable, and rare earth elements were essential for advanced technology production. The system would be a profitable addition to Council. "Territory, population estimates?" Counselor Vrex asked. "Approximately 7 billion individuals," Zeth Prime replied. "Standard pacification protocols should be sufficient. Our sociologists estimate 95% compliance within 72 hours of initial contact." This was music to the Council's ears. Standard pacification protocols were simple and efficient. A show of overwhelming force, destruction of key military installations, and clear demands for surrender. Most primitive species submitted quickly when faced with technology they could not comprehend. "I motion for immediate territorial claim," Counselor Keth announced. "The Krillian Swarms volunteer for the honor of bringing this system into Council control." Several other representatives immediately objected. The Draconian fleet wanted the glory. The Zerthi Dominion claimed their biopacification methods would be more efficient. Even the usually peaceful, ethereal collectives suggested they could handle the matter through diplomatic channels. ZFY Prime raised his hand for silence. The Council appreciates all offers of service. However, initial intelligence gathering was conducted by Vorthan Empire vessels. The Krillian swarms have an excellent record with primitive species pacification. I believe they are the logical choice. The debate that followed was brief and civilized. The Krillians had indeed handled several similar operations in recent decades. Their methods were efficient and cost-effective. More importantly, they had requested only minimal support from other council members. The motion is called for vote, announced Chancellor Thrix, the council's ancient leader. All in favor of granting territorial rights to the Krillian swarms for System Terra 3. Hundreds of lights blinked green across the chamber. A few yellow lights indicated abstentions, mostly from species who had wanted the job themselves. Red lights appeared. Motion carried, Chancellor Thrix declared. Councillor Keth, you have authorization to proceed with standard pacification protocols. Estimated timeline? Councillor Keth's compound eyes glittered with satisfaction. We can have a fleet in position within 2 local days. Pacification should be complete within 1 local week. Full territorial control within 1 local month. Excellent, the Chancellor said. Please submit regular reports to the Council. Are there any other matters requiring immediate attention? The discussion moved on to trade disputes and resource allocation arguments. The matter of the small blue planet seemed settled. Another primitive world would join the thousands already under Council control. The representatives were already thinking about lunch and their afternoon meetings. But they had made a mistake, several mistakes actually. The first mistake was assuming that primitive technology meant primitive thinking. The Council's databases contained detailed information about weapons, ships, and industrial capacity. They had perfect records of human nuclear arsenals, chemical rockets, and steel production. What they did not have was any real understanding of human psychology. The second mistake was thinking that divided politics meant inability to cooperate. The Council had observed human conflicts and concluded that the species was too fractured to present unified resistance. They failed to understand that humans had a strange habit of putting aside their differences when faced with external threats. The third mistake was assuming that crude weapons meant crude tactics. The Council evaluated military threats based on technological capability. They measured laser output, plasma efficiency, and shield strength. They did not account for creativity, desperation, or the human tendency to weaponize absolutely everything. The fourth and most serious mistake was thinking that humans would fight like other species the Council had encountered. Previous pacification operations had followed predictable patterns. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, accept submission, establish control. The Council had never encountered a species that would spend 3 days reverse engineering alien technology while their cities burned around them. On Earth, astronomer Dr. Sarah Chun was finishing her night shift at the Arecibo Observatory. She had been tracking unusual gravitational anomalies for the past week. The readings made no sense according to conventional physics. Objects were moving toward the solar system at impossible speeds, then suddenly decelerating in ways that violated everything humanity knew about space travel. "Hey, Mike," she called to her colleague. "Come look at this data again. I think our equipment is malfunctioning." Dr. Mike Rodriguez walked over to her station, coffee mug in hand. He studied the screen for several minutes, frowning at the numbers. "The readings are consistent across all our instruments. Either we have simultaneous failures in completely different systems, or something very large is heading our way." "How large?" Sarah asked. Mike ran some quick calculations. "Based on the gravitational effects? I'd say at least 200 objects, each roughly the size of a cruise ship, maybe bigger." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Natural phenomenon?" "Not unless physics textbooks need major revisions," Mike said grimly. "These things are under intelligent control? They're following precise flight paths and coordinated maneuvers." Neither scientist wanted to say what they were both thinking. The objects were clearly artificial. They were clearly coming from outside the solar system, and they were clearly heading directly for Earth. In 12 hours, the Krillian fleet would drop out of hyperspace and announce their intentions to the primitive inhabitants of Terra 3. They expected quick submission, easy victory, and commendations from the Council. They were about to learn that humans had very different ideas about how first contact should proceed. The Council's simple decision was about to become their worst nightmare. The Krillian fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic wasps. 200 ships materialized in Earth's orbital space, their dark hulls gleaming with alien technology. Each vessel was the size of a city block, bristling with weapons that could level mountains. Fleet Commander Zakthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive blue world rotate slowly below. His 4 arms worked the control stations with practiced efficiency. This would be his 15th pacification mission, and he expected it to be as routine as all the others. Communications, open broadcast channels to the planet's surface, he ordered. His translator would convert his words into the local language automatically. Inhabitants of Terra 3, his voice boomed across every radio and television frequency on Earth. I am Fleet Commander Zakthal of the Krillian Swarms, acting under authority of the Galactic Hegemony Council. Your world is now claimed territory of the Council. Surrender immediately and you will be treated fairly under Council law. Resist and face the consequences. The response was immediate and completely unexpected instead of panicked broadcasts. Begging for mercy, the airwaves filled with chatter in dozens of different languages. Military communications networks that had been silent moments before suddenly burst into activity. Radar stations that had been tracking civilian aircraft swiveled toward space. Sir, reported his sensor officer, the planet's military forces are mobilizing, all of them, simultaneously. Zakthal's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. Red dots were appearing across the planet's surface as human military bases activated. The pattern made no sense according to Council intelligence. The species was supposed to be divided into competing factions. Are they responding to our communication? He asked. Unknown, sir. They seem to be coordinating their response across all political boundaries. We are detecting communication traffic between military units that our intelligence said were enemies. This was unusual, but not alarming. Sometimes primitive species attempted futile shows of unity when faced with superior force. It typically made the pacification process faster, since there were fewer separate surrenders to negotiate. Target their military installations, Zakthal ordered. Standard demonstration pattern? Destroy enough to show our power, but leave infrastructure intact for later use? The first salvo was precise and devastating. Plasma beams lanced down from the fleet, striking major military bases on 6 continents. The ancient installations of NORAD in North America, the Kremlin in Russia, and the Pentagon in the United States vanished in brilliant flashes of superheated gas, but something was wrong. Instead of the expected chaos and surrender, the human military response became more organized. Communication networks rerouted around damaged nodes. Backup command centers activated immediately. Mobile missile launchers that had been hidden in forests and mountains began moving toward firing positions. Sir, the sensor officer said, his voice uncertain, they are launching projectiles at our fleet. Zakthal checked his screens and almost laughed. Primitive chemical rockets were climbing slowly toward his ships, trailing fire and smoke. The crude missiles would take several minutes to reach orbital altitude, and his point defense systems could destroy thousands of them without effort. Ignore them, he said. Continue targeting military installations. The second wave of plasma strikes hit airbases in Europe and Asia. Fighter jets that had been scrambling for takeoff disappeared in balls of flame. Naval bases erupted as alien. Energy tore through steel and concrete like paper. But again, the human response was not what the Krillians expected. Instead of panic, there was adaptation. Human forces began spreading out, abandoning large bases in favor of smaller, mobile units. Military equipment that had been stored in obvious locations suddenly vanished into urban areas and wilderness. Sir, the communications officer reported. We are receiving transmissions from the surface. Multiple languages, but our translators are working. Put them through, Zakthal ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with voices from around the planet. American generals, Chinese admirals, Russian commanders, and military leaders from dozens of smaller nations. But they were not begging for mercy or negotiating surrender terms. They were sharing information. Tactical data about alien weapon signatures, shield frequencies, and ship movements flowed between militaries that had been enemies hours before. The humans were analyzing his fleet in real time and distributing the results globally. Commander, the sensor officer said urgently, the primitive missiles are approaching our perimeter. Should I activate point defenses? Yes, of course, Zakthal replied absently. He was more interested in the strange coordination happening on the planet. Below. The first wave of human missiles reached the Krillian fleet and died exactly as expected. Point defense lasers swatted them from space like insects. But Zakthal noticed something odd about the attack pattern. The missiles had not been aimed to maximize damage. They had been spread out, approaching from different angles, almost as if the humans were testing his defenses rather than trying to win. Sir, the weapons officer called out, I am reading energy buildup in the planet's industrial centers. Power consumption is increasing rapidly in manufacturing zones. Before Zakthal could respond, proximity alarms began screaming. One of his destroyers, the Talon of Krex, had suffered a catastrophic explosion. The ship was breaking apart, venting atmosphere and debris into space. What happened? Zakthal demanded. Unknown, sir. The ship reported a minor collision with space debris, then lost all communications. Debris analysis suggests. Sir, this is impossible. Report. The debris contains human technology. Primitive chemical explosives, but the detonation pattern suggests they were placed strategically inside our hull. Zakthal stared at the tactical display. A human ship had somehow approached close enough to attach explosives to a Krillian destroyer. That should have been impossible. Human spacecraft were crude chemical rockets that could barely reach their own moon. Sir, incoming transmission from Scout Wing 7, the communications officer announced. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was strained and panicked. Fleet Command, this is Scout Leader Vorth. We are under attack by human spacecraft. Repeat, human spacecraft are engaging us with weapons fire. Impossible, Zakthal said. Human ships cannot reach orbital altitude with significant payload. Sir, they modified their spacecraft. They are using our own power cells as explosive devices. They attached chemical rockets to cargo vessels and launched ramming attacks. One of them just flew directly into scout ship Razor Wind. Both ships are destroyed. The tactical display updated to show 3 more Krillian ships damaged or destroyed. Each had been hit by modified human spacecraft that should not have been capable of orbital combat. The humans had taken technology from the first ships they had destroyed and were already using it against the fleet. How long since first contact? Zakthal asked. 4 hours, 17 minutes, sir. 4 hours. In less than 5 hours, this primitive species had analyzed alien technology, reverse-engineered power systems, and mounted successful counterattacks against a superior space fleet. The Council intelligence files had not mentioned anything about this level of technological adaptation. Sir, the sensor officer said, we have a bigger problem. Human forces are recovering wreckage from our damaged ships. They are stripping technology and moving it to protected locations. On the planet below, teams of human engineers worked frantically around crashed alien debris. They cut apart hull plating with industrial tools, extracted computer cores with welding equipment, and pulled power cells free with construction cranes. Military trucks carried the salvaged technology to hidden facilities where scientists and engineers waited. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had been working on experimental propulsion systems at NASA when the invasion began. Now she stood in an underground bunker in Colorado, staring at a power cell the size of a briefcase that produced more energy than a nuclear reactor. Can we use it? Asked General Morrison, the base commander. Oh, we can definitely use it, Dr. Walsh replied. The question is how fast we can build delivery systems. This thing puts out enough power to run our entire facility for a month. If we can figure out the control system, how long? The general pressed. Give me 12 hours, she said. Maybe less if the team in Berlin shares their data. Around the world, similar scenes played out in dozens of hidden facilities. Human engineers worked with desperate creativity, combining alien technology with their own industrial capability. They could not build ships like the Krillians, but they could build weapons that used Krillian power sources. Back in orbit, Fleet Commander Zach Thull watched his tactical situation deteriorate by the hour. His fleet was taking steady losses from increasingly sophisticated human attacks. Suicide runs by modified spacecraft, improvised weapons using Krillian technology, and coordinated strikes that showed detailed knowledge of alien ship weaknesses. Sir, the communications officer said, we are receiving another transmission. From the surface. It appears to be from their military leadership. Put it through. The voice was calm and professional, speaking in the language called English. This is General Patricia Hayes, acting as spokesperson for the United Earth Defense Force, Fleet Commander. We offer you one opportunity to withdraw from our system peacefully. Zach Thull was so surprised he forgot to check his translator. You are demanding our surrender? No, Commander. We are offering you safe passage to leave. You have already lost 6 ships and counting. Our industrial capacity is increasing exponentially as we integrate your technology. Every hour you remain makes your situation worse. Impossible. You are a primitive species with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. We were, General Hayes agreed. That was this morning. This is this evening. We learn quickly. As if to emphasize her point, warning alarms sounded throughout the flagship. The tactical display showed multiple human spacecraft approaching at high speed. But these were not the crude chemical rockets from the morning attacks. These ships moved with the smooth acceleration curves of gravitic drive systems. Sir, the sensor officer whispered, those ships are using our own propulsion technology. The human ships opened fire with weapons that produced familiar energy signatures. Plasma cannons, molecular disruptors, and gravitic mines. All Krillian technology, mounted on human-built spacecraft and operated by human crews who had learned to use them in less than 8 hours. Fleet Commander Zach Thull looked at his displays and felt something he had never experienced in 15 pacification missions. He felt afraid. Communications, open a channel to Council Command, he ordered. Request immediate reinforcements. Full battle fleet. Sir, what should I tell them about the resistance level? Zach Thull watched another of his ships explode under fire from weapons that had been Krillian property that morning. Tell them, he said slowly, that the Council intelligence files were incomplete. 6 months had passed since the first Krillian ships arrived at Earth. What should have been a simple 3-day conquest had become a nightmare that kept the Galactic Council awake at night. Fleet Commander Zach Thull's requests for reinforcements had grown increasingly desperate with each passing week. The Council chamber buzzed with worried conversations as representatives reviewed the latest reports from the Sol system. Chancellor Thrix called for order, his ancient voice carrying the weight of thousands of years of galactic politics. The chair recognizes Councillor Zirith of the Zirithi Dominion. He announced. Councilor Zirith rose from her seat, her reptilian features gleaming under the chamber lights. The Zirithi were known throughout the galaxy as the masters of biological warfare. Their custom-designed plagues had brought entire star systems to their knees without firing a single shot. Honored colleagues, she said, her voice smooth and confident, the Krillian approach has clearly failed. Brute force cannot overcome a species that adapts so quickly to conventional weapons. The Zirithi Dominion offers a more elegant solution. She activated a holographic display showing microscopic organisms. We have developed a series of biological agents specifically designed for human physiology. These pathogens will disable their industrial capacity while leaving infrastructure intact. Clean, efficient, and permanent. Murmurs of approval filled the chamber. Biological warfare was considered more civilized than orbital bombardment. It preserved valuable resources while eliminating resistance. How long for deployment? Asked Counselor Keth. The Krillian commander looked exhausted. His once pristine uniform was torn and stained from months of combat stress. Our bioships can reach the system within 2 local days, Xerath replied. Full deployment across the human population centers within 6 hours. Complete societal collapse within 72 hours. Acceptable, Chancellor Thrix declared. Authorization. Granted. May this finally end the embarrassment in Sector 7 Alpha. The Xerathi bio fleet was a thing of beauty and terror. 20 ships that looked more grown than built, their organic hulls pulsing with internal life. Each vessel carried billions of precisely engineered organisms designed to target human DNA, human nervous systems, and human immune responses. Bio Admiral Seth commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel that resembled a floating garden of death. His species had perfected biological warfare over millennia. They had never encountered a target they could not eliminate with the right pathogen. Begin dispersal over major population centers, he ordered as his fleet reached Earth orbit. Pattern Omega-7. Full species saturation. The bioweapons fell like invisible rain over Earth cities. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Delhi, and dozens of other metropolitan areas were bathed in carefully designed death. The pathogens were works of art, engineered to be undetectable until they had spread through entire populations. For 3 days, the Xerathi waited for reports of mass casualties. Their sensors monitored human communication networks, expecting to detect the collapse of organized resistance. Instead, they detected something that made Bio Admiral Seth question his own instruments. Report, he commanded his science officer. Sir, the human population appears to be ... adapting. Their immune systems are not responding as predicted. Instead of succumbing to our pathogens, they seem to be developing resistance. Impossible. Our bioweapons are specifically engineered for their physiology? Yes, sir, but the humans are modifying the pathogens. They are using our own organisms as the basis for counterweapons. Bio Admiral Seth stared at his displays in growing horror. The humans had not just survived the biological attack. They had captured samples of Xerathi pathogens and were reverse engineering them in real time. Worse, they were using Xerathi biotechnology to create new weapons. Dr. Maria Santos had been working on genetic research at the University of São Paulo when the alien plague hit her city. Instead of running or hiding, she had volunteered for the emergency response team studying the mysterious illness that should have killed millions but somehow had not. The organism is incredibly sophisticated, she told her international colleagues via encrypted video conference. It is designed to attack human cellular structure, but there is something strange about its behavior. Dr. James Chun, calling in from a bunker beneath Beijing, leaned forward in his video feed. Strange how? It seems to have adaptive protocols built into its genetic structure, almost like it is designed to learn from resistance and modify itself accordingly. That would explain why our immune systems adapted so quickly, said Dr. Elena Petrov from Moscow. Our bodies treated it like a training exercise rather than an attack. The revelation had staggering implications. The alien biological weapons were not just sophisticated. They were educational. Human immune systems had learned from them, becoming stronger and more adaptable. But more importantly, human scientists were learning from them too. We can use this, Dr. Santos said quietly. If we can understand how their organisms adapt and learn, we can create our own versions. Within a week, human laboratories around the world were producing biological weapons that made Xerathi pathogens look primitive. The key was not just copying alien technology, but improving it with human creativity and complete disregard for conventional limitations. The first sign of trouble for the Xerathi fleet came when their own biosensors detected familiar organisms in Earth's atmosphere. But these were not the pathogens they had released. These were modified versions, enhanced and weaponized in ways that violated several galactic conventions on biological warfare. Sir, the science officer reported, his voice shaking. The humans have released counter-organisms into our fleet's life support systems. What kind of organisms? Modified versions of our own pathogens, sir. But they have been altered to target Zirathi physiology instead of human. Bio-Admiral Seth felt something cold crawl up his spine. How is that possible? They have no knowledge of our biology? Sir, we have been broadcasting biological data for months. Every weapon we deployed carried information about our own cellular structure. The humans used that data to reverse engineer weapons specifically designed to kill us. The Zirathi bioships began dying from the inside out. Their organic hulls, designed to be living ecosystems, became battlegrounds for microscopic warfare. Human-modified pathogens spread through the ship's life support systems, attacking the very biological foundations that kept the vessels alive. But the horror was not limited to space combat. Reports began arriving from other parts of human space that made the Council question what kind of species they were fighting. Captain Vex of the Krillian Raider Bone Crusher had been leading hit-and-run attacks on human supply convoys for 3 months. It was dangerous work, but profitable. Human cargo ships were lightly defended and carried valuable technology. Today's target was a human freighter traveling between Earth and Mars. The ship appeared to be carrying standard industrial equipment, nothing special. Vex ordered his crew to prepare for boarding. Standard intimidation protocol, he told his warriors. Minimal casualties, maximum compliance, we want the cargo intact. The boarding went smoothly at first. Vex's heavily armed warriors cut through the freighter's hull and stormed the cargo bay. But something was wrong. Instead of terrified civilian crew members, they found human soldiers waiting for them. These were not the desperate defenders Vex had fought before. These humans moved with predatory grace, their equipment a mixture of alien and human technology. That made them look like armored demons. Worse, they seemed to know exactly how Krillian boarding tactics worked. It is a trap, Vex realized, but too late. The humans had not been running supply missions. They had been hunting Krillian raiders, using fake cargo ships as bait. When Vex's warriors tried to retreat to their ship, they found human soldiers already aboard the Bone Crusher. Methodically capturing his crew, the humans did not kill their prisoners. That would have been merciful. Instead, they took them too. Facilities that made even veteran Krillian warriors break down in terror. The humans called it intelligence gathering. The techniques they used had never been seen in civilized warfare. Commander, Yex of the Draconian fleet received reports from 17 different raiding parties, all with the same pattern. Human cargo ships that were actually military vessels in disguise. Human soldiers who fought with equipment that combined the best features of multiple alien technologies. Human interrogation methods that extracted information with horrifying efficiency. They are not just defending themselves, Commander Yex reported to his superiors. They are hunting us. They have turned our own tactics against us, and they are better at it than we are. The worst reports came from the edges of Council space, where human raiding parties had begun attacking alien supply lines. These were not desperate defensive actions. These were carefully planned offensive operations that demonstrated detailed knowledge of Council military protocols. The humans had captured enough alien ships to build their own hybrid fleet. Their vessels combined human industrial capability with alien technology, creating warships that were both familiar and terrifying. More disturbing, they were recruiting crew members from other Council species, not through conquest or coercion. Through ideology, human propaganda broadcasts had begun appearing on alien communication networks throughout Council space. The messages were simple and direct. They spoke of freedom from Council taxation, freedom from arbitrary territorial claims, and freedom from species-based discrimination. Join us, the broadcast said. We judge beings by their actions, not their biology. We welcome any species that values liberty over submission. Some aliens were listening. Desertion rates in Council fleets began climbing as individual crew. Members decided that the human cause was more appealing than continued service to the Council hierarchy. Bio Admiral Seeth's final report to the Zirathi Dominion was brief and terrifying. His entire biofleet had been destroyed or captured. The humans had not just survived biological warfare. They had turned it into a weapon that was now being used against Council forces throughout the sector. "They learn faster than we can adapt," he reported from his escape pod. "Every weapon we use against them becomes a weapon they use against us. Every tactic we employ becomes a tactic they improve upon. They are not just winning this war, they are rewriting the rules of warfare itself." Back on Earth, General Hayes reviewed the latest intelligence reports from across human space. Her forces now controlled not just the Sol system, but 3 adjacent star systems that had voluntarily joined the human coalition. More importantly, they had begun receiving volunteers from dozens of alien species who preferred human leadership to Council authority. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we are receiving another communication from the Galactic Council. They are requesting negotiations." General Hayes smiled grimly. "Tell them we will consider their request. After they withdraw all forces from human space and formally recognize our territorial claims. And if they refuse, then we continue expanding our operations until they understand that this war will not end the way they expected." The Council's simple decision to conquer a primitive world had become their worst nightmare. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory, and they were winning. 2 years had passed since the Galactic Council made their simple decision to claim Earth. What should have been a routine pacification mission had become the greatest military disaster in Council history. The emergency session chamber buzzed with panic as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to address what they now called the human problem. Chancellor Thrix looked older than his 3,000 years as he called the session to order. The ancient leader had seen empires rise and fall, but he had never witnessed anything like the reports flooding in from human space. "The chair recognizes Admiral Corks of the Mandorian Shock Corps," he announced. Admiral Corks stood slowly, his massive frame bearing scars from a dozen major wars. The Mandorians were the Council's elite military force, warriors bred for combat across multiple worlds. His report would carry enormous weight. "Honored Council," Corks began, his deep voice filled with something no one had ever heard from a Mandorian before: uncertainty. "I regret to inform you that Operation Steel Fist has failed completely." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Operation Steel Fist had been the Council's most ambitious military action in centuries. 3 full battle fleets, over 600 ships, led by the most experienced commanders in Council space. "Define failure," demanded Councilor Vrex, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. "Total loss of Fleet 7, 60% casualties in Fleet 12. Fleet 5 retreated after suffering 40% losses in the first engagement." Admiral Corks paused, his warrior's composure cracking slightly. "The humans captured our flagship." The chamber fell silent. In 3,000 years of galactic warfare, no Council flagship had ever been captured by an enemy force. The very idea violated everything they understood about military possibility. "How?" Chancellor Thrix asked quietly. Admiral Corks activated a holographic display showing the battle. The images were taken from surviving Council ships, and they told a story that challenged everything the Council believed about warfare. "The humans did not fight like any enemy we have encountered," he said. "They used tactics that our military academies classify as impossible. Coordinated attacks by ships that should not have been able to communicate across such distances. Weapons combinations that should not have worked according to physics. Most disturbing, they seemed to know our battle plans before we implemented them." The hologram showed human ships moving with impossible coordination. Vessels that appeared to be standard human designs suddenly displayed alien weapons, alien shields, and alien propulsion systems. But they were not simply copying Council technology. They were improving it, combining systems from different species in ways that created entirely new capabilities. "They have integrated technology from at least 12 different Council species." Admiral Corks continued. "But they are not just using our equipment, they are making it better. Their hybrid designs outperform our purebred systems in every category. Counselor Keth of the Krillian swarms leaned forward. His once proud bearing had been broken by months of military disasters. What about the flagship? How did they take the eternal dominance? Admiral Corks's expression darkened. They used a tactic we call impossible. They weaponized gravity itself. The explanation that followed violated several fundamental principles of physics as the Council understood them. The humans had somehow created artificial gravity wells that could be deployed as weapons. They had used these gravity weapons to drag the massive flagship out of formation, disable its engines, and board it while it was helpless. The boarding action itself defied all military doctrine, Admiral Corks said. Human soldiers wearing powered armor that combined Krillian exoskeletons, Zirithi biological enhancements, and draconian energy shields. They fought with a ferocity that shocked even Mandorian veterans. Casualties among the flagship crew? Counselor Vrex asked, minimal. The humans were not interested in killing the crew. They wanted prisoners for what they call intelligence gathering. A chill ran through the chamber. Everyone had heard rumors about human interrogation techniques. The few council personnel who had been recovered from human captivity refused to discuss their experiences, but their psychological profiles showed permanent trauma. Where is the eternal dominance now? Chancellor Thrix asked. Operating under human command in the Volf 359 system, Admiral Corks replied. Our intelligence indicates they have completely reverse-engineered its systems and are using it as a template for new ship designs. The Council's most advanced warship was now serving the enemy. Worse, it was being used to create an entire fleet of hybrid vessels that combine the best features of Council technology with human innovation. What about our other operations? Asked Treasurer Voth. Surely the humans cannot be everywhere at once. Admiral Corks turned to a new display showing the Galactic Sector map. Red zones marked areas under human control or influence. The pattern was terrifying in its scope and speed. Human forces now control 17 star systems, he reported. But control is the wrong word. These systems joined them voluntarily. The humans are not conquering territory. They are liberating it. The map showed human expansion in all directions from Earth, but this was not military conquest in any traditional sense. Human forces would arrive in a system, defeat, or drive off Council forces and then invite the local population to join what they called the Terran Coalition. Local populations are responding positively to human governance, Admiral Corks continued. Tax rates under human administration are significantly lower than Council standards. Species discrimination has been eliminated. Individual freedoms are protected regardless of biology or origin world. Propaganda, scoffed Counselor Zirith, though her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps, Admiral Corks agreed, but effective propaganda. Desertion rates in Council fleets have increased by 300%. Entire ships are defecting to human forces, bringing their crews and technology with them. The military situation was catastrophic, but the political implications were even worse. The human coalition was attracting members from across Council space. Species that had been subjugated for centuries were declaring independence and requesting human protection. What about their military capabilities? Asked Counselor Vrex. Surely they cannot match our industrial capacity. Admiral Corks laughed bitterly. They do not need to match our capacity. They exceed it. Human manufacturing combines automated systems with alien technology to produce equipment faster and cheaper than Council factories. A single human shipyard can outproduce an entire Council industrial world. The display showed images of human space infrastructure that made Council engineers weep. Massive shipyards built around asteroids, using alien technology to process raw materials at impossible speeds. Factory complexes that operated continuously, staffed by a combination of human workers and alien volunteers who had joined the coalition. They have also begun recruiting our own people, Admiral Corks said quietly, not through force or coercion, through opportunity. Human organizations offer better pay, better working conditions, and advancement based on merit rather than species. Hierarchy, traitors, Counselor Keth spat. Rational actors making economic decisions, Admiral Quarks corrected. The humans treat alien recruits as equals. They have Zerathi scientists, Draconian engineers, even Krillian warriors serving in their fleets. These individuals are not prisoners or slaves. They are full citizens of the coalition with all associated rights and benefits. The implications were staggering. The Council's power had always been based on species hierarchy and economic exploitation. The human model of equality and merit-based advancement threatened the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. What about their enhanced soldiers? Asked Counselor Vrex. Our reports mention human warriors with impossible capabilities. Admiral Quarks nodded grimly. They call them augmented Marines. Human soldiers who have undergone biological and technological enhancement using technology from multiple Council species. They possess enhanced strength, improved reflexes, radiation resistance, and the ability to survive in hard vacuum. The display showed combat footage of these enhanced humans in action. They moved with inhuman speed and precision, their equipment seamlessly integrated with their enhanced biology. Most disturbing, they fought with a combination of tactical intelligence and absolute fearlessness that made them nearly unstoppable. A single augmented Marine squad can defeat a full Mandorian company, Admiral Quarks admitted. They do not just outfight our warriors, they outthink them. Their tactical flexibility and adaptability exceed anything in our military doctrine. How many of these enhanced soldiers do they have? Chancellor Thrix asked. Unknown. Our estimates range from 10,000 to over 1 million. They are extremely secretive about their enhancement programs, but recruitment appears to be voluntary and ongoing. The Council chamber buzzed with worried conversations. 1 million enhanced human soldiers would be equivalent to 10 million standard Council troops. Combined with their technological advantages and superior equipment, such a force could challenge the entire Council military. What about their fleet capabilities? Treasurer Voth asked. Currently estimated at over 2,000 combat vessels, Admiral Quarks replied. But these numbers are misleading. Human ships are more capable than equivalent Council vessels. Their hybrid technology allows individual ships to perform roles that would require entire Council squadrons. The strategic picture was clear and terrifying. In 2 years, humanity had transformed from a primitive species with chemical rockets into a military power that could challenge the entire Galactic Council. They had done this not through conquest, but through rapid technological advancement and voluntary alliance building. What are our options? Chancellor Thrix asked. Admiral Quarks was quiet for a long moment. Military victory appears impossible with current resources. The humans learn faster than we can adapt. Every weapon we deploy against them becomes a weapon they use against us. Every tactic we employ becomes a tactic they improve upon. What about total warfare? Suggested Counselor Keth. Planetary bombardment, population elimination, complete system sterilization. Attempted last month, Admiral Quarks replied. The humans have developed planetary defense systems that can stop orbital bombardment. Moreover, any attack on civilian populations would likely trigger full human retaliation against Council worlds. Their current restraint appears to be based on our restraint. Then what do you recommend? Chancellor Thrix asked. Admiral Quarks straightened his shoulders and delivered the words that would change galactic history. Immediate ceasefire. Formal recognition of the Terran Coalition as a sovereign political entity. Negotiated withdrawal from all disputed territories. Full diplomatic relations. The chamber erupted in outrage. Councilors shouted demands for continued warfare, threats of personal combat, and accusations of cowardice. But beneath the noise, a cold realization was spreading through the assembly. They had lost. The simple decision to conquer a primitive world had resulted in the creation of a new galactic power that threatened the very existence of the Council itself. The humans are offering negotiations, Admiral Quarks said when the chamber quieted. They have proposed a peace conference on neutral territory. They are willing to discuss territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. Why would they negotiate when they are winning? Asked Counselor Vrex. Because, Admiral Cork said quietly, they appear to prefer cooperation to conquest. They are not interested in destroying the Council, they want to reform it. The implications of that statement would haunt the Council for years to come. The humans were not just winning the war. They were offering to rebuild galactic civilization on principles of equality and mutual benefit. Chancellor Thrix looked around the chamber at his fellow counselors. Fear, anger, and desperate hope warred in their expressions. The simple decision that had started this disaster would require an equally simple decision to end it. Motion to accept human terms for peace negotiations, he said quietly. The vote was closer than it should have been, but the result was inevitable. The Galactic Council would negotiate with the species they had tried to conquer. The age of human dominance in galactic affairs was about to begin. The peace conference took place on Nexus Station, a neutral trading post that had operated for over 1,000 years without taking sides in galactic conflicts. The ancient station had seen many historic meetings, but nothing like what was about to unfold. Chancellor Thrix arrived with a delegation of 20 council representatives, each one carefully chosen to represent the major species and power blocks. They traveled in the fastest ships the council could provide, their journey taking 4 days through hyperspace. The humans arrived in 30 minutes. General Patricia Hayes stepped off a sleek vessel that combined human engineering with technology from a dozen alien species. Her ship had traveled the same distance in a fraction of the time, using what human scientists called quantum tunnel drives, a technology that had not existed before the war began. Chancellor Thrix, General Hayes said, extending her hand, in the human greeting gesture. Thank you for accepting our invitation to discuss terms. Thrix hesitated before taking the offered hand. The human woman appeared young by council standards, perhaps equivalent to a middle-aged Vorthan. But her eyes held the weight of command, and her bearing suggested someone who had seen considerable combat. General Hayes, he replied through his translator, I admit I am curious about your terms. Your forces have been quite successful in recent months. We prefer to think of it as helping our neighbors achieve self-determination, Hayes said with a slight smile. Please, shall we begin? The conference room was neutral territory in every sense. Plain walls, simple furniture, and recording equipment provided by the station's management. No flags, no symbols of authority, just two groups of beings trying to end a war that had spiraled far beyond anyone's expectations. Before we discuss territorial boundaries, Hayes began, I want to address a fundamental misunderstanding. The Terran Coalition did not seek this conflict. We responded to an unprovoked invasion of our sovereign territory. Your sovereignty was not recognized by the Council, Councillor Vrex pointed out. Under galactic law, unclaimed systems are available for territorial expansion. Under whose galactic law? Hayes asked politely. We were never consulted about these laws. We never agreed to Council authority over our system. From our perspective, you invaded our home without justification. The Council representatives exchanged glances. They had never considered that species might reject Council authority entirely. For thousands of years, the Council had assumed that their power was legitimate simply because it existed. That is an interesting philosophical position, Chancellor Thrix said carefully, but it does not address practical concerns. The galaxy requires order. Trade routes must be protected. Disputes must be resolved. The Council provides these services. Indeed, Hayes agreed. And we are prepared to discuss how these services might be provided more efficiently and fairly. She activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. Red zones marked areas under Council control, blue zones showed Terran Coalition territory, and green zones indicated systems that had declared independence but not yet chosen sides. The current system is unsustainable, Hayes continued. 17 major species have declared independence from Council authority in the past year. 12 more are considering similar actions. Your tax revenues have dropped by 40%. Military costs have increased by 300%. The numbers were accurate, and every Council representative knew it. The war with humanity had triggered a galaxy-wide crisis of confidence in Council leadership. What do you propose? Asked Treasurer Voth, always focused on practical matters. A new model of galactic governance, Hayes replied. Voluntary association instead of imposed authority. Elected representation instead of hereditary positions. Equal rights regardless of species origin? Impossible, Counselor Keth declared. Some species are naturally better suited for leadership roles. The current system reflects biological reality. Hayes smiled, but there was no humor in her expression. Counselor Keth, your people tried to conquer us using that assumption. How did that work out? The Krillian representative had no answer. His species' military reputation had been shattered by human resistance. Worse, many Krillian warriors had defected to human forces, claiming they found human leadership more competent and fair. Let me be more specific, Hayes said, changing the display to show detailed proposals. The Terran Coalition is prepared to recognize continued Council authority over willing member systems. In exchange, the Council will recognize Terran Coalition sovereignty over our current territory and respect the independence of systems that choose to leave Council control. And if we refuse? Asked Admiral Corks. Then we continue our current expansion, Hayes said simply. Every month, more systems request protection from Coalition forces. Every month, more Council personnel defect to our cause. Every month, our technological and military advantages increase. The threat was delivered calmly, without anger or malice. That made it more frightening than any shouted declaration of war. You would conquer the entire galaxy? Chancellor Thrix asked. We would liberate it, Hayes corrected. But conquest would be the practical result, yes. We would prefer cooperation, but we will not allow continued oppression of species that seek freedom. The Council representatives huddled in private consultation. Their whispered conversations grew heated as the reality of their situation became clear. They could accept human terms, or they could face eventual complete defeat. What guarantee do we have that humans will honor these agreements? Counselor Vrex asked when they returned to the table. The same guarantee we have that you will honor them, Hayes replied. Mutual benefit and enlightened self-interest. The Coalition has no desire to rule species that do not wish our protection. We are prepared to sign mutual defense pacts, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs with any Council systems that choose to remain independent. Admiral Corks leaned forward. And military cooperation? Welcomed, if desired, Hayes said. We face common challenges in unexplored galactic regions. Piracy, resource disputes, contact with unknown species. Cooperation serves everyone's interests. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The Council representatives fought for every concession, but their bargaining position was weak and everyone knew it. The final agreement reflected the new balance of power in the galaxy. The Treaty of Nexus Station established the Terran Coalition as a sovereign political entity with full diplomatic recognition. The Council retained authority over systems that chose to remain members but could not prevent peaceful secession. A joint commission would oversee territorial disputes and trade regulations. Most importantly, the treaty established the principle of voluntary association. No species could be forced to join or remain in any political organization against their will. This changes everything, Chancellor Thrix said as he signed the document. Thousands of years of galactic tradition ended in 3 years. Not ended? Hayes corrected. Evolved. The galaxy is changing, Chancellor. We can change with it or be left behind. The immediate aftermath of the treaty was dramatic. Within weeks, 37 star systems formally withdrew from Council authority and requested Coalition protection. Others remained with the Council but negotiated better terms for membership. The economic impact was equally significant. Coalition. Technology began appearing in Council markets, offering capabilities that had been considered impossible. Human-designed ships, weapons, and industrial equipment quickly became the most sought-after items in galactic trade. But the most profound changes were cultural. The human concept of equality based on individual merit rather than species hierarchy spread throughout Council space. Young beings from dozens of different worlds began demanding the same opportunities and freedoms that Coalition citizens enjoyed. 3 years after the signing of the Treaty of Nexus Station, General Hayes stood on the observation deck of the Terran Coalition flagship, watching construction of a new space station in the Volf 359 system. The station would serve as the Coalition's diplomatic and trade center, a symbol of humanity's place in galactic civilization. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we are receiving another application for Coalition membership. The Draconian fleet wants to join as a full member species." Hayes smiled. The Draconian fleet had been one of the Council's most reliable military forces. Their decision to join the Coalition would effectively end the Council's ability to project military power. "Approved," she said. "Schedule integration conferences for next month. Also, we have a request from the Council for technical assistance with their new democratic reforms. They want human advisors to help design election systems for member worlds." Hayes nodded. The Council had been forced to adopt democratic reforms to prevent further defections. The irony was not lost on her that humanity was now helping to democratize the organization that had tried to conquer them. "Anything else?" she asked. "Long-range sensors have detected signals from the galactic core regions. Unknown technology, possibly a new species attempting first contact." Hayes felt a familiar excitement. Humanity's rapid expansion had brought them into contact with dozens of species, most of whom had become willing partners in exploration and trade. "Prepare a first contact team," she ordered. "Standard protocols. Peaceful approach, open communication. Offers of friendship and cooperation." As she watched the construction crews working on the new station, Hayes reflected on how much had changed since that day when alien ships first appeared in Earth's skies. Humanity had been faced with conquest, and had chosen resistance. That resistance had become liberation, not just for humans, but for species across the galaxy. The simple decision that the Galactic Council had made to invade Earth had indeed changed everything. But not in the way they had intended. Ambassador Zeth Prime sat in his small office on a minor council world, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. His career had been destroyed by the Earth Incident, as it was now called in official records. He had been demoted to managing trade disputes on agricultural worlds, but he was still curious about the species that had ruined his life. He pulled up the latest intelligence reports on human activities and found himself reading about Coalition exploration missions, scientific discoveries, and cultural exchanges with dozens of different species. The humans had become everything the Council claimed to be: protectors of peace, promoters of prosperity, and guardians of justice. They had achieved through cooperation what the Council had tried to maintain through force. Tate Prime closed the reports and looked out his window at the peaceful farming communities below. Even here on this forgotten world, he could see signs of human influence. Better farming equipment, improved communication systems, and most telling of all, young beings from multiple species working together as equals. The humans had won more than a war. They had won the future, and somewhere in the depths of space, human ships continued their expansion into the unknown, carrying with them the message that had reshaped galactic civilization, that all beings, regardless of origin, deserved freedom, dignity, and the chance to reach for the stars. The Council had thought they were invading a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened a force that would transform the galaxy forever.